Chapter 41. No new messages. Isaac checked his phone for the 5th time in 2 minutes, only to find the same lack of new messages that had been there all day. He listed sideways on the couch. Beck sat at the kitchen table, editing his latest batch of photos. Are you sure Sean actually wants to see me? He texted Sean that morning about meeting up for lunch or dinner, and it was now mid-afternoon with no response. Positive. He's probably busy with the show. It's only 2 weeks away. Isaac sighed and checked his phone again. He hasn't asked to meet since the shelter. That was a week ago. Oh my God, Beck groaned, shoving his face in his hands. You didn't even want to see him until the other day. I know. And he's turned down every chance I've given him since you told me to go for it. Just in case Sean really did return Isaac's feelings, Isaac wanted to give him the chance to say it. So, of course, the moment he decided pursuing Sean Winters was worth the inevitable heartbreak, Sean Winters refused to have anything to do with him. The only time Isaac had heard from him in the last 10 days was an email with 2 tickets to the autumn fashion show. It was driving Isaac up a wall. These events are big deals. I'm sure he's just preoccupied. Beck spoke with forced patience. Yeah, I guess. Isaac tapped the back of his phone, staring at the weird stain on his ceiling. Even if Sean was simply busy getting ready, he could still spare a moment to text Isaac back, couldn't he? Unless Beck was wrong, or had made up the whole thing about Sean feeling anything for Isaac as a way to get back at Isaac for rejecting him. That wasn't really Beck's style. Beck was more the type to confront Isaac directly than orchestrate an elaborate heartbreak. Do you think I should text him again? Maybe he forgot to respond. Beck swore. Go be a lovesick puppy somewhere else. It's my apartment. You can't kick me out of my own apartment. Want to bet? It was a bet Isaac lost. After a short wrestling match, Isaac found himself in the hallway, shoes and wallet thrown after him. Grumbling about bodybuilder roommates, he slipped his shoes on and grabbed his wallet, heading outside. A walk wouldn't hurt at least. Still no new messages from Sean. This was ridiculous. Clearly Beck had been wrong, and Isaac needed to move on and forget about Sean. Or maybe he needed advice from someone he hadn't dated. He swung by the bookstore and found Olivia sticking sale prices on the DVDs and music. Perfect, the music department was always deserted. Isaac. She grinned. You came to visit. Hey Olivia. We miss you so much here. These went on sale 2 weeks ago, and you weren't here to do anything about it. He held back a laugh. Sorry. She waved it off. We still get people coming and looking for you. I'm not letting you come back to be harassed. People were still doing that? I thought they'd have gotten bored by now. Olivia shrugged. It's not as many now, but the second someone does find you here again it'll pick up. He sighed. All the pictures he'd seen of celebrities flipping off cameras or wearing poor disguises made so much more sense. Anyway, what brings you here? Sean sponsoring another shopping spree. No, actually I wanted your advice on, well, everything. I'm great at advice, Olivia said. Unless it's about cooking, but I doubt you came to me for cooking tips. He laughed. I know better than that. Then lay it on me. She kept stickering while he dumped all his relationship problems on her. He didn't explain Sean's conservatorship, leaving Sean's reasoning for manipulating them into the tabloids as a vague bribe from his father. I guess I just can't tell if Sean does actually love me or not. Beck is convinced he does, and since he hates Sean, I don't think he'd lie about that. But now Sean is ignoring me and I don't know what to think. I can't believe Beck is rooting for you to get together with another guy. He seems so determined to win you over. It finally clicked for him that we'd never be what we were, so I think this is his way of trying to just be friends. You'd never know from that mouth on him, but he's actually really sweet, isn't he? Olivia asked. It's his biggest secret, Isaac agreed. But I figured things out with Beck. I need advice about Sean. Well, the question of whether or not Sean loves you can only be answered by Sean. But if he's ignoring me, should I take that as a sign he doesn't? I wouldn't assume something like that with the amount of miscommunication you two have had. Fair. And for what it's worth, Olivia started. She put down the roll of stickers to face him. Sean always looked at you like you hung the moon and the stars. Anyone using someone else for their own publicity wouldn't look that way when there were no cameras around. I don't think so, at least. That was the impression Isaac had too. But he'd been wrong about Sean before, and with how distant they'd been since they started speaking again, it was hard to tell what was going on in Sean's head. You just need to talk to him and ask him straight out, Olivia said. Isaac nodded. I will. Assuming Sean ever spoke to him again, that was. There were no new messages on him. Chapter 42. Sean chooses a second painting. There was an energy humming under Sean's skin ever since his conversation with his father. He didn't regret calling off the deal, but his world felt like a cage again, and he was ready to throw himself against the walls. All the crazy prep work for the show didn't help. He was dragged from photoshoot to photoshoot, shoved in one makeup chair, and then prodded with pins as designers made final adjustments. This was what his life was going to continue to be now, and if this seamstress pricked him with a pin one more time, he was going to kick her in the face. The second he was released for the day and back in his own clothes, he got in his car and drove to the Bennett Psychiatric Hospital. The hour-and-a-half drive helped him calm down, and his head felt a little clearer by the time he knocked on Tyler's door. The same man from before opened the door, greeting him with a big smile. "Little bro. You came back." Sean stared at him. "I'm not." "Oh no, not my brother, I know. Didn't remember your name though. Just that you're Tyler's little bro Tyler." "I am right here," Tyler said, standing in the living room. "Your brother is here," Roger informed him. "I can see that," Tyler said. "Come on, Sean, we'll go upstairs." Sean followed Tyler up into his room, once again taking the desk chair while Tyler sat on his bed. "Nick told me about your epic quest to woo that green kid," Tyler said. "How's it going?" "Terribly," Sean stated. "I don't think I can earn his forgiveness at this point. Just introduce him to Dad. He'll understand in one conversation and forgive you instantly."
Sean snorted.
"I would, but I love him too much to put him in the same room as Dad." "Ah, how sweet." Sean rolled his eyes. "I also called off the deal with Dad." "What? Why?" He twisted his fingers in his pants, staring at the floor. "Because if Isaac never wants to see me again, I don't want to look back at this summer and my memories of him with guilt, that I only used him to get away from Dad." Tyler blinked. "You're an idiot. The deadline is in 2 weeks? And you gave up." "I'll get another chance to end the conservatorship," Sean said. "But I won't have another chance with Isaac." He still didn't expect Isaac to forgive him. It was too little, too late, and now that going out with him wouldn't even be useful, he couldn't bring himself to answer Isaac's texts. There was no point forcing Isaac to be uncomfortable around him. "I stand by what I said." Tyler leaned over his knees. "Get your freedom, and then make it up to the guy." Sean shook his head. "I couldn't do it. I don't want to earn my freedom because he suffered." "Okay, but now the suffering that he's already gone through was for nothing," Tyler said. "Like, I know my social skills aren't the best, but is that not what's happening?" "No, it is," Sean agreed. "But I just had to do it this way." He would stand by his decision. "Isaac isn't a ticket to my freedom." Tyler stared. Then he shook his head. "Whatever, man. Maybe you should be in here with me." "I might be before long if I don't figure out some other way to end the conservatorship," Sean admitted. He ran a hand through his hair. "You said before Dad bribed the judge to enact it in the first place, right?" "I don't have any proof," Sean said. He'd had the same idea a few years ago and scoured his father's accounts with no luck. Dad probably paid cash. Can't trace it. "Could force a confession out of the judge," Tyler suggested. "How do you expect me to do that?" Tyler shrugged. "More money." "Money I don't have," Sean reminded him. "It's all Dad's." "You'll think of something," Tyler assured. "The option to run away and change your name is always there too." Sean shook his head. "You're not helpful, are you?" "Never claimed to be." "I'll remember that next time I need advice." "You really came to the psych ward and expected good advice?"
Sean shrugged.
"Nick and Luna aren't trapped the way we are. You seemed like the only one who'd understand." It had been a weird moment for him when he decided to visit Tyler, the realization that there was someone who'd understand, someone Sean could go to. Even weirder, Sean wanted to go to someone. A few months ago, he would have locked himself in the gym and dealt with it himself. It was nice being able to talk to someone instead. The humor faded from Tyler's face. "Yeah, I get it. That's why I don't understand why you gave up your chance at freedom. Do you know what I'd be willing to do to finally get out of here? All you have to do is parade a guy you already like in front of some cameras, and you're free. But if that guy doesn't want to be in front of a camera, it's not right. I shouldn't have forced him." "You have a weird sense of nobility," Tyler muttered. "But whatever. Your life, make your own choices." "Thanks, I think." Tyler threw himself back on his bed. Sean stood to show himself out, but he glanced at the open closet and the canvases stacked inside. "Can I take another painting?" "Knock yourself out." He rifled through them until finding a big green planet behind a cityscape. The shade of green wasn't even close to Isaac's eyes, but Sean would forever associate the color with Isaac anyway. The unanswered messages on his phone burned in his pocket, but he couldn't bring himself to force his company on Isaac anymore. So, tucking the painting under his arm, he bid his brother goodbye and went back out to his car, leaving the text messages unread. Chapter 43, Running for the Runway. There are so many people, Isaac whispered. The crowd in front of him mingled all over the first floor of the Angel Falls Hotel and Ballroom, the location of the Phoenix Industries Autumn Fashion Show. Every woman wore elegant floor-length dresses and matching shawls, while every man wore full three-piece suits. Well, every man but Isaac and Beck. They were in basic black suits, and Isaac considered it a victory that he was even wearing a tie. This is by far the fanciest place we've ever been, Beck whispered back. Isaac had to agree. It made the restaurant Sean took him to on their first date look like a sandcastle. This was just the lobby, and there was a fountain in the middle of a flower garden, surrounded by low couches and chairs. The ceiling extended above them the full height of the hotel, letting in all the natural light from above. There was something ethereal about the atmosphere, and he understood the hotel name. How much do you think a room costs here? Beck asked. My entire life savings, Isaac replied. Thank goodness the hotel was less than an hour from the city, and they wouldn't need to spend the night. We should go find our seats. The event rooms took up 2 floors in the west wing because of the ceiling height, and extended below the ground floor levels. The lower levels distracted the pair as they walked by a railing. Tables with blue and green tablecloths were already set up, interspersed with matching couches from the lobby. Glass floor panels revealed koi ponds under their feet. Beck whistled. I wish I had my camera. Only registered photographers and news crews were allowed to have cameras, and all phones had to be off when the show started. The actual ballroom where the fashion show would be held had been transformed. The stage in the back extended through the middle of the room almost to the opposite wall, and special lights lined the edge. More lights and camera rigs hung from the ceiling. Chairs had been set up in tiers around the stage, each row and seat numbered. Isaac and Beck's seats were in the front row, where reporters and other special invited guests sat. Is it weird that I'm nervous? Isaac asked. He rubbed his sweaty palms over his pants. I don't even have to do anything, and no one will even be looking at me once the show starts. You're not nervous about the show, Beck said. You're nervous about what comes after. Isaac's answering laugh was anxious and forced. He hasn't texted me in 3 weeks. Are you sure I should talk to him? We are not having this conversation again, Beck declared. They discussed some variation of this topic at least once a day for the last 3 weeks. Isaac wanted to be confident in his decision to confront Sean instead of running away. But old habits die hard. If he didn't confront Sean, he could tell himself whatever version of the story he wanted to believe, and in the process give up whatever possible future they might have. If he didn't run away, if he swallowed his fear and demanded answers from Sean, then he might get the happy ending he believed in at the start of the summer. It would all depend on Sean's answers. And since Sean wasn't answering his phone, Isaac had to pull a page out of Beck and Sean's book and confront him in person. Beck put a hand on his bouncing knee. Relax. It's going to be fine. Just sit back and enjoy the show for now. Isaac took a deep breath. Right. Over the next 20 minutes, the seats around the ballroom began to fill as people wandered in. Isaac was blessedly ignored by all the reporters, or at least didn't notice them taking his picture, which was just as well. An announcement warned people the show would begin in 5 minutes, and the main lights dimmed in preparation. At 5 minutes exactly, a huge man stepped out from the screen at the start of the runway. His suit was a deep red, and the resemblance to Sean was obvious. Eric Winters strode to the middle of the catwalk and addressed the crowd. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this year's autumn fashion show. I'm pleased to present the best designs Phoenix Industries have to offer, and I hope you all enjoy the show. He retreated behind the curtain soon after, and upbeat techno music started. Eric's personal collection would be the last event of the show. Before then, each of the designers that worked for him showcased their collections. Models strode out one at a time, and then they came out all together with the designer for one final pass before the music changed and the next set started. When the final set started, half the lights changed to a soft blue glow. The first model strutted out seconds later, wearing a dress with wide asymmetrical hips. The skirts were the deep blue of the ocean, and the corseted top was like a sandy beach. She made a quick turn on the runway, and as she walked back towards the curtains, the next model came out. A male this time wearing a gray and white ensemble with a collar styled like shark teeth. Each underwater-themed outfit was more and more impressive. It was nothing people would ever wear in real life, but the sheer fact it was possible to make these outfits at all impressed Isaac. And then Sean stepped out, and Isaac's heart stopped beating. His hair was styled to make it look like he just stepped out of the water, pushed back away from his face to show off the scales painted around his eyes. The jacket he wore was a sheer, shimmery blue, with a deep neckline showing off his collarbones. His pants were a solid emerald green, wrapped in loose layers of the same shimmery blue fabric as the jacket. He looked like a merman. Isaac hadn't known that was something he needed in his life, but now that it was here he never wanted to stop looking. The whole look was breathtaking, and the confidence Sean had striding up the catwalk was mesmerizing. Their eyes met on Sean's return to the curtain, and Sean offered him a small smile. The quiet, genuine smile he didn't show fans, that was just for Isaac. Isaac might have stopped breathing. Chapter 44. All good things must end. Sean hadn't been this nervous before a fashion show since his official debut when he was 12. All he had to do was walk out and look pretty. If the outfit was terrible, it wasn't his fault. No one criticized models for bad fashion, only the designer who'd made it. It was an easy, low-stakes job, all things considered, as long as he didn't fall. Tonight was different. Isaac would be out there tonight. Sean knew because even though he hadn't responded to a single message in weeks, Isaac had kept texting him, and he'd told Sean when he and Beck left his apartment. He should have told Isaac it wasn't necessary, but a selfish part of Sean wanted to see Isaac one last time. Besides, he'd been too much of a coward to reach out to Isaac in any form over the last few weeks. He wished this night had never come, that they could have stayed in limbo forever. Sean wasn't ready to face him, or have this be the last night he ever saw Isaac. But time didn't work like that. The day of the show was here, and he stood backstage in full hair and makeup, shaking his hands out and counting his breaths to calm down, the noise of the audience growing as people took their seats. Water? Luna asked, holding out a water bottle with a straw. She wore a simple black dress, the tips of her fingers stained with some of the makeup. Sean took it and carefully sipped. His mouth felt like sandpaper, but he was also nauseous despite not eating all day. You're going to do great, she comforted. It's not the runway I'm worried about, Sean admitted. I know, Luna said. But if he's stuck with you this long, I don't think you have anything to fear. No, he's just that nice of a person. I don't deserve him. That was why he wouldn't ask Isaac for another chance tonight. Isaac agreed to fake date him on the condition they never saw each other again after this show. Sean would honor that, even if he'd rather amputate all 4 limbs than say goodbye forever. His father walked past, adjusting the microphone on his suit lapel. They shared a brief look. Eric's eyes narrowed and he frowned at Sean before he was pulled away by the production manager to get in position. Ignore him, Luna said, taking the water bottle back. You'll do great. Forget about Isaac for the next hour. Like he could ever forget about Isaac. He took up his position in the lineup, the finale of his father's personal collection. He'd be the last model of the evening, the pinnacle of his father's designs as always. It was a long time to try and keep himself calm. It also felt like no time at all before he stood next to the curtain, waiting for his cue. The signal fell and he stepped out. Because of the lights, he couldn't see that far into the crowd. Isaac had a front row seat though, and Sean forced himself not to look for him. If he spotted Isaac, he wouldn't be able to look at anything else. That didn't stop his eyes from drifting as he returned to the curtain, mismatched eyes landing on Isaac's emerald green. Isaac's face showed open awe and excitement, and the tension in Sean's shoulders melted away. Why had Sean been so nervous to see him? One more turn on the runway beside his father, and then it was over. His father went out one last time with the other designers and gave some parting remarks, but Sean was steered towards the changing rooms with all the other models. By the time he washed off the makeup and put on his tux, most of the audience was already at the gala that followed the show. Very few models attended the gala, but as Eric Winter's son, it was a requirement for Sean. He slipped in quietly, blending in with the crowd as he found something to drink. Sipping water from a champagne flute, he started scanning the crowd. There you are. Nick popped up in front of him, Tyler at his side. Sean's mouth dropped. Tyler? You're here. Tyler grinned. Nick busted me out for the night. His long blue hair was tied in a neat ponytail, and his simple suit was a little large. He wouldn't win any Best Dressed awards among the guests, but Sean was thrilled he was here at all. Is it okay for you to be here? I thought anything to do with fashion. I've been keeping an eye on him and we sat near the doors, Nick said. We convinced my doctors I couldn't avoid fashion forever, and I wanted to support my baby brother, Tyler said. What about Dad? Sean asked. He scanned the crowd around him, but he didn't see his father. We're avoiding him, Nick stated. Tyler shrugged. Apparently, even one drink dumped over his head is too many, so no fatherly reunions this evening. Sean couldn't stop his laughter in time. The mental image of man with bright blue hair and a poorly fitted suit dumping a glass of champagne over his father in the middle of a formal gala was too funny not to laugh. Don't encourage him, Nick pleaded. Tyler grinned, and Sean did his best to control himself. Well, I'm glad to see you, Sean said. Having either brother attend meant a lot to him, since Nick hadn't been to a fashion show since they were kids, so to have both right now? He might start crying. He'd always felt lonely at previous galas, nothing more than a doll walking around on his father's orders. His brothers banished that feeling just by being there. Are you spending the night here? Nah, doctors aren't that generous, Tyler said. We'll have to get going soon. Couldn't leave without seeing you first, Nick said. And I guess we should find Luna too. Yeah, she'll want to see you guys, Sean agreed. I haven't seen her since before the show. It doesn't bother me how long it takes to find her, Tyler said. That just means extra time out of the ward. Yeah, but if I get in trouble they won't let me take you on day trips anymore, Nick said. They went off to find Luna, waving goodbye while continuing to argue about when to leave. Sean laughed after them.
Sean,
Isaac called, pushing his way through the crowd to get to him, Beck only a few paces behind. Isaac was wearing a full suit and tie, and Sean's knees went weak at the sight. He should have found excuses to wrangle Isaac into formal wear a long time ago.
Isaac, Beck se han greeted.
His nerves from earlier returned full force. Did you enjoy the show? It was really impressive, Isaac said. Though I have to admit, I was kind of hoping you'd still be wearing that merman look. Sean blinked, mouth opening and closing. He hadn't expected Isaac to act like this, like everything was fine between them. It was taking his mind a minute to catch up. The outfits are kept on display after a show, so we don't spill something on them or tear them. That makes sense, Isaac said. You looked amazing in it, by the way. Beck snorted. Just amazing. That's the only adjective the writer has. Isaac's cheeks flushed. Shut up. It's fine, Sean assured him. I'm glad you both came tonight. You haven't made it easy to talk to you any other way, Isaac said. I'm sorry, it's been crazy with the show preparations, Sean replied. Told you, Beck said to Isaac, and then he glared at Sean. But you really couldn't find 2 minutes to text him that you were busy? Beck's gaze was far more accusing than Isaac's, and promised at least one black eye if Sean was careless in his response. I should have warned you I wouldn't be available, I apologize, Sean said. That's okay, Isaac said. But I do need to talk to you about us. Oh, the moment was here already. Sean was not nearly as prepared as he'd pretended to be. Was breathing always this hard? Maybe he should have skipped the tie tonight. There's no need. Thank you for everything this summer. He would not cry. You can reach out to the company if you need anything. He would not cry. Isaac's face fell, and he started to reach out for him.
Sean.
In public. Sean would not cry in public. I have to go. Sean turned away from Isaac and slipped into the crowd, heart pounding against his chest. Hey, get back here, Beck yelled. His vision was blurry with tears, and they would spill over any second. He needed to leave while he still had the willpower to not beg Isaac for another chance that he didn't deserve. Isaac must have told Beck not to chase him. It was the only reason Sean could think of that explained how he was able to run out of the gala without Beck tackling him. The sobs started seconds later. Chapter 45. This changes everything. He watched Sean disappear into the crowd, his chest aching. Beck stormed after Sean, vanishing amongst the people just as quickly. Everyone had sounded so sure that Sean returned Isaac's feelings, that there had to be another reason he'd been ignoring Isaac. They'd all but guaranteed things would work out if Isaac could just sit down and talk with Sean. He shouldn't have listened to any of them. Sean had ignored him because Sean couldn't wait to be rid of him. Fine, if that was how Sean wanted it, Isaac could be out of town by the end of the week. Wiping furiously at his burning eyes, Isaac went to find Beck before he murdered the model. That jerk wasn't worth their time anymore. He shouldn't have even come to the stupid fashion show. That was hours of his life he'd never get back. Someone grabbed his arm. Expecting it to be a nosy reporter trying to get more details, he ripped his arm free and turned towards them with a snarl. Easy there, killer, a man with bright blue hair said, holding his hands up in surrender. Isaac was sure he'd never met him or the other man with him, but there was something familiar about them. Their eyes, he realized. They were the same gray and blue shades as Sean's, only split onto 2 different people. Are you Sean's brothers? He asked. We are indeed, the blue-haired man grinned. I'm Tyler, this is Nick. Nice to meet you, Isaac, Nick said. Isaac returned the words, but the sentiment wasn't there. He had no interest meeting any of Sean's family, though he was curious about Tyler. No one seemed to know what happened to him all those years ago, and Isaac had been under the impression Tyler wasn't necessarily around anymore. Listen, Tyler started. I'm going to skip the pleasantries. You need to go after Sean. No way, Isaac said. He's made it perfectly clear he wants nothing to do with me. No one would be able to convince him otherwise. He got what he wanted anyway. The conservatorship, right? Tyler asked. Isaac nodded and crossed his arms. His heart ached with bitter pain. He called off the deal. It felt like the floor went out from Isaac's feet. What do you mean? I mean that my idiot brother decided he'd rather prove his love to you or whatever and refused the deal, Tyler explained. When the hell did he do that? Nick demanded. I don't know, a month ago? Tyler shrugged. Why would he? Isaac shook his head. That made no sense. Everything they'd done all summer was for that one purpose. What gave Sean the right to decide he didn't want that anymore? Like I said, he's an idiot. Tyler crossed his arms. But that's why you need to go after him. He did it for you. For Isaac? How was any of this for Isaac? I tried to talk to him before. Seemed like he couldn't wait to be rid of me. That would be the guilt, Tyler said. He thinks the world of you. And if he's not going to let himself be free of our father, then I want to make sure there's some happiness in his life. Guilt? Sean ran because he felt guilty? Oh, that put things in a whole new light. The weeks of silence wasn't because he didn't want to see Isaac, but because he thought he didn't deserve to. Something like hope sweetened the bitterness building in his chest. Maybe Beck and Olivia were right after all. They really needed to have that conversation now. I need to find him, Isaac said. He has to tell me himself. Yeah, he does, Tyler agreed. Good luck. Isaac was going to need it. He headed for the direction Sean disappeared. Hopefully Sean hadn't gone too far. Before he reached the hall Sean had gone down, he found Beck frantically apologizing to a man with bright red hair. Dark wine stained the man's suit, and shattered glass sprinkled the floor at their feet. Beck! Isaac called, interrupting the string of apologies from Beck's mouth. I need to find Sean. Yeah, I know I was following him, but then, he gestured to the man in front of him. Got distracted. Don't worry about it, man, the redhead said. There were traces of elaborate makeup around his eyes that hadn't quite washed off, which made Isaac think he might be one of the models. Sounds like you're in a crisis. He had no idea. Isaac's heart was pounding. Yeah, a bit. I really am sorry, Beck said. Isaac pushed Beck on. We're both very sorry, but we need to go. Good luck, the man waved. Beck glanced behind him, face flushed. Isaac groaned. Really? This is the worst possible time for you to develop a crush. The faint pink on Beck's cheeks darkened to a cherry red. Shut up. You can find him again after you help me find Sean, Isaac said. It turned out, once they were away from the din of the crowd, finding Sean was easy. All they had to do was follow the Chapter 46. Sean takes a leap of faith. He hadn't expected it to hurt this much. His whole chest burned. He could barely breathe past his choking sobs. It was over. The best thing he'd ever had in his life was gone. He hoped no reporters followed him. Bawling his eyes out in the middle of the hallway was humiliating enough without cameras being shoved in his face. He'd been hoping to make it to a bathroom or a closet or something, but his legs had given out on him. Crawling next to the wall was the best he could do. It hurt so much more than he'd thought it would. Saying goodbye, knowing that was the last time he'd ever see Isaac, was the hardest thing he'd ever done. The last time he'd cried this much had been his mother's funeral. Oh, Sean! Someone whispered before arms wrapped around him, pulling him against a warm chest. Between his sobbing and the carpet, he hadn't heard any footsteps. He stiffened and tried to muffle his crying. Want me to stay? Someone else asked. No, I've got this, the one holding him said. Sean blinked past his tears to see Beck nodding. If that was Beck, then the one holding him. Isaac. Yeah, it's me, Isaac said. I'm so sorry. I'm here now, you're okay. He ran his fingers over Sean's hair and rubbed circles on Sean's back. Why are you here?
Sean hiccuped.
Because I'm not letting you go without a fight, Isaac said, tightening his hold around Sean. Not this time. You said, after the show. He was still crying too hard to get all the words out, but Isaac knew what he meant. I know. I thought our relationship was something else. We'll talk when you're feeling better. Just breathe for me, okay? With Isaac comforting him, It only took a few more minutes for Sean to get a hold of himself enough for a proper conversation. They waited another few minutes, rearranging themselves to be more comfortable against the wall. Isaac took a strong hold of his hand and pushed their knees against each other.
Sean sniffled.
I'm really confused. He didn't want to get his hopes up, but sitting pressed against Isaac like this only led his mind to one possibility. Isaac laughed. That tends to happen when no one says what they mean. That did not help ease Sean's confusion. Isaac rubbed his thumb on the back of Sean's hand. Is it true you called off the deal with your father? Sean leaned his head back on the wall and shut his eyes. He didn't even care how Isaac found out. Yes. Can you explain why? Because, as much as I want to be free, I don't want it to be because I manipulated someone else. It was just a game to my father, and I refused to win that way. But you were so close, Isaac said. He'd been achingly close. If my conservatorship ended but I never saw you again, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. It felt too much like I'd just be using you as a tool, and you are so much more to me than that, Isaac, and I just couldn't do it that way. He was going to cry again. I shouldn't have ever tried to in the first place. Isaac was quiet for a moment, still rubbing patterns on Sean's hand. If it was just about the publicity, he started. Why was I so important? You could have gone out with someone new every week. Why me? His fingers tightened around Isaac's. The only reason this deal worked was because it was you, because this freckled, curly-haired stranger saved my life for no other reason than he couldn't ignore someone in trouble. And then you ran off to work immediately after, like it was no big deal. Isaac hid his face in Sean's shoulder. I'd never wanted to get to know someone so much in my life. And that first photo of us, you acted like you didn't care at all, so I thought maybe my father's insane idea would work. How naive he'd been, how hopeful and foolish. I really didn't care about the first one, Isaac admitted.
Sean hummed.
But then you did start caring, and I should have done something about it. By then though I cared too much about you and what you thought that I couldn't admit what I was doing. Even though I knew it would blow up in my face. You keep saying you cared about me, Isaac started. Sean's grip turned bruising around Isaac's hand. Ido. I care so much, that's why I'm sitting here crying at the thought of never seeing you again. Because I hurt you and don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't want to keep hurting you by pushing for it. He'd do anything for Isaac, even walk out of his life forever. Isaac's free hand came up to turn Sean's face towards him, and then there were soft lips on his. The kiss was quick and chaste, and possibly the best moment of Sean's life. I love you, Sean whispered against his mouth. Maybe it was selfish to lay that on Isaac when he still didn't know how Isaac felt after all that rambling, but he had to say it out loud at least once. And if Isaac was willing to initiate a kiss, their first real kiss, in fact not quick pecks on the cheek, well, it seemed like the best time for Sean to take a leap of faith. That's all I needed to hear, Isaac whispered back. Lips grinning against his, Isaac kissed him again. Chapter 47. Isaac enjoys the moment. The kiss settled weeks of anxiety coiled in Isaac's muscles. He felt 30 pounds lighter. Pulling away, they leaned their foreheads against each other. I guess this means you still want to see me? Sean asked. Isaac laughed. Yes, I still want to see you, and I want you to stop ignoring my texts. Being ghosted sucks. Sean pulled back to glare lightly at him. Yeah, tell me about it. Agree that neither of us will do it again? Agreed, Sean chuckled. They sat back against the wall once more, leaning on each other, their hands still wrapped together. Isaac hadn't felt this content since the beach. I love you, by the way. Just in case the kisses weren't clear.
Sean hummed.
Probably best to use words when it comes to us. Speaking of, can I ask you something? Of course, Isaac answered. I don't know why you forgave me. I'm grateful, don't get me wrong, but also confused. I can't fix what I did. Isaac took a moment to formulate his response. The main reason I was so mad at you was because I thought everything about our relationship before had been faked. It felt like you'd been leading me on just to get what you wanted. His hand creaked as Sean's grip tightened again. I meant every word I told you back then. The only thing I lied about was the media. I know that now. But I didn't want to let myself believe that before in case I was wrong. Didn't want to give you a second chance to hurt me again. That's the last thing I ever wanted to do. Isaac squeezed his hand back. I believe you. I couldn't before. Now that we've finally talked, I get it. Yes, you used me, and if you ever do that again I'll sick Beck and Olivia on you, but you didn't use me as much as I thought you did, if that makes sense. And because the bulk of our relationship really was honest. Isaac shrugged. It's not that hard to forgive you after all. He understood now that Sean loved him, and he only insisted on so much publicity to try and win his freedom. That was still an issue Isaac needed to deal with, but he'd let himself enjoy this peace while it lasted. Thank you, Sean said. Thank you, Isaac returned. They stayed in the hall for another 10 minutes, basking in each other's company. Then Sean's stomach growled, and Isaac decided they should probably head back to the gala. He hauled Sean to his feet and gave him another peck on the cheek. The gala looked exactly the same, but it felt different walking in with Sean at his side. They looked for water first and Sean downed 3 glasses before they moved on to the food table. Sean picked up a plate with one hand, and then tried to tug his second hand free from Isaac. Isaac refused to let go. Sean raised a brow at him. My hand now, Isaac informed him. He picked up the tongs to fill Sean's plate. Chuckling, Sean rolled with it and directed Isaac to which desserts he wanted. After filling his plate, they found an empty table to stand at so Sean could set the plate down and eat. There Isaac scanned the crowd for Beck, Tyler or Nick. He didn't see anyone with blue hair, so he assumed Tyler must have already left and probably taken Nick with him. He was unsurprised to find Beck chatting with the same redhead he'd spilled wine over earlier, and he laughed quietly to himself. What? Sean asked. Isaac pointed Beck and the model out. I think it's his first crush since me. Sean narrowed his eyes. Huh, that's Harley Kingston. You know him? Not well, but he's a decent enough guy. He's modeling to pay off college tuition. That's one heck of a part-time job, Isaac muttered. He didn't even want to think of his own student loans.
Sean Hamd.
If Beck doesn't get his number tonight, I can probably find it. I owe him for helping me this summer. Isaac whipped around to face him. When did you two become friends? After your shopping spree at the bookstore. He figured out you were more than a publicity stunt, and offered to help mend our relationship. Isaac mentally counted back, slotting the information into his timeline. The shopping spree was after he and Beck made out in the kitchen and figured out they'd never click together the way they used to. That softy, he muttered. No wonder he was so sure you returned my feelings. Setting him up with a date is a good way to thank him, right? Sean asked. Isaac grinned. We are absolutely setting them up if he can't do it himself. Beck deserves someone he'd be happy with too. If it wouldn't be with Isaac, he was only too happy to arrange it with someone else. I have one more favor to ask, Isaac started. Name it, Sean said without hesitation. I want a meeting with your father. Sean froze, a mini cupcake halfway to his mouth. Are you insane? I just want to have words with him, that's all, Isaac promised. You can be there too. I don't know if I should be more worried for you or my father, Sean muttered. You'll set something up? I still think you're crazy, but sure. It'll be fine, Isaac assured him, patting his arm. Sean looked doubtful, but he didn't protest. Chapter 48. Wonders never cease. Apparently, requesting a private meeting with his father the day after a big fashion show was the fastest way to get his undivided attention. Sean had expected to be squeezed into his father's schedule sometime during the week, but as soon as he asked over breakfast, Eric agreed to a meeting that afternoon in his office, even though it was Sunday. He met Isaac outside the company building. Isaac had worn his nicest jeans and a clean white button-down shirt with the same suit jacket from the night before. Hey, Isaac greeted, reaching up to peck Sean on the lips.
Sean smiled.
He could get used to that greeting. Hey yourself. Isaac took his hand again. True to his word the night before, he'd only let go after Sean escorted him to the car, and even then, he jokingly tried to pull Sean in the car with him. Should I get used to being one-handed around you? Sean asked, leading him inside. Yes. He laughed. I'll keep that in mind. Had Isaac been like this with Beck? Maybe the other man had some tips. Oh, did Beck say anything about Harley? Sean pushed the button for the elevator. Isaac lit up. As soon as I asked about him, that was all he talked about last night. He's crushing so hard, it's adorable. The elevator doors opened and Sean tugged Isaac inside. But did he get Harley's number? Isaac giggled. He forgot. I should have taken a picture of his face when he realized priceless. Sean wished he could have seen it. I'll send you the contact info this week. Perfect. This time I'll record his face when I give it to him. Please do. Or wait until I'm there. He'd love to see Beck freaking out in person. All too soon the elevator doors opened again, and they stepped out on the top floor. His father's office door was open, waiting for them. Sean yanked Isaac back into the elevator and shut the doors. Isaac yelped.
Sean?
What's wrong? Are you sure you want to do this? You don't have to meet him. Isaac's face softened and he squeezed Sean's hand. I'm sure. Do you want to wait here? Not a chance. There was no universe where Sean let his boyfriend face his father alone. Then whenever you're ready, Isaac said. He waited patiently for Sean to take a deep breath and open the doors again. Sean held his head high as they approached the office door, feigning confidence he didn't feel. Isaac had refused to tell him why he wanted to meet Eric so badly, but there was a fearless determination in his eyes. Sean truly didn't know what to expect of this encounter. He didn't bother knocking. The door was open and he was sure Eric heard the elevator doors open twice. Eric looked up from a file on his desk, casually flipping the folder closed to give them his attention. Isaac Green. Pleasure. Pleasure's all mine, Isaac returned cheerfully. Your show last night was stunning. Thank you. My designers work hard for a chance to feature their collections every year. It shows, Isaac assured him. If you don't mind, I'd like to skip to the point of this. Feel free. I'm curious why you asked to meet with me now. He squeezed Sean's hand. Sean told me about his conservatorship, and the deal you made regarding me this summer. Sean stopped breathing. Where was Isaac going with this? Eric showed no change in his expression. I do apologize for the inconvenience our deal caused you. I have a demand in regards to that inconvenience. Sean raised a brow. Why hadn't Isaac just asked him? Why go through his father? Taking a deep breath, Isaac set his shoulders back and looked Eric in the eye. I want you to end Sean's conservatorship. Sean's jaw hit the floor. That was why they were here. Isaac was trying to help Sean? I know he called it off, Isaac went on. But he held up his end of the deal. He gave you the publicity you wanted. You have no right to withhold it from him. I agree. Sean whipped his head around to his father. There was no way he'd heard that right. You wait, what? Isaac asked. I agree, Eric repeated. He held up the folder on his desk. Sean's conservatorship will end as soon as a judge signs the release forms tomorrow. What?
Sean breathed.
You were already planning to end it? Isaac asked. That didn't sound like his father at all. The whole deal was a setup from the start, something Eric expected Sean to fail so he wouldn't have to free Sean at the end of it. Or if Sean did succeed, then his freedom was meant to further Eric's own goals somehow. Eric laid the folder down again. Yes. Sean tightened his fists. Why? How does ending the conservatorship benefit you? What's your angle? Eric closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. I suppose it's only natural you suspect an ulterior motive, given our track record. Of course I do.
Sean shouted.
You've never done a single thing for me or my siblings that didn't help yourself. Opening his eyes, Eric met Sean's gaze. I know, and I'd like to change that, starting with your conservatorship. Chapter 49. Isaac has so many questions. Isaac's gaze ping-ponged between father and son. He'd thought arguing for Sean's freedom would be a harder battle, but it looked like the aftermath would be the real challenge. Why?
Sean demanded.
Why change now? Because I've been watching you, Eric said. Every year, you retreat into yourself more and more. You used to fight me on everything, but as more time passed, you stopped. Isaac glanced up at Sean. He wasn't sure either man remembered he was still here, and this felt like a private family thing, but he didn't want to abandon Sean. Until they asked him to leave, he'd keep quiet and offer his silent support. Maybe I was just tired of losing all the time, Sean said. I'm sure you were, Eric said. Your mother was tired a lot too in those last years. Sean stiffened beside him. Isaac had so many questions. I know I'm not the best father. There are many things I should have done differently when you were children, signs I shouldn't have missed. Tyler's breakdown should have been a huge red flag, Sean stated. His hand shook in Isaac's and Isaac gently squeezed his fingers. Yes, it should have. But I wanted to believe it was a condition in Tyler's head, that I was separate from it. That was why, when you had your accident as a teenager, I jumped on the chance to force conservatorship on you. I thought if I could keep you under my control, I could prevent it from happening again, or prevent you from running off like Nick. You weren't worried about the family, Sean countered. All you cared about was your legacy. That's the only reason you had kids in the first place. Isaac's eyes widened. Sean had never gone into detail about his childhood, and Isaac had never pried. He'd taken the vague shadows Sean presented him with and assumed there was a monstrous history beyond them, but he never could have guessed how monstrous. Eric glanced at Isaac. It's true. I wanted to build a fashion empire, and I wanted it to last beyond my lifetime. To do that, I needed you children to follow in my footsteps, or at least be involved in some way, so that I could pass the company to you when I retire. That was a normal desire, Isaac thought, somewhat hysterically. Parents wanted to pass a family business between generations all the time. Usually the family members were willing, but Isaac needed this to be less horrifying or he was going to open his mouth and say something he'd regret. That doesn't make it okay, Sean said. No, Eric agreed, looking down at the folder. I have a lot to atone for in regards to you and your siblings, but I'm hoping this is a start. Wouldn't Tyler have been easier? Sean asked. Eric winced. Tyler requires more planning. He'll need somewhere to live once he's released, and I doubt he wants to move in with us. Nick or Luna would take him in a heartbeat, Sean said. Or crazy thought, you could ask Tyler what he wants. Eric looked genuinely surprised at the idea, and Sean swore under his breath. I'm learning as I go, Eric defended. I will take your advice into consideration. What a depressing thought, that this fully grown man was only just learning to be a thoughtful person to his own kids. Isaac was so glad Eric had already agreed to end the conservatorship. He was going to take Sean and run far, far away the moment he was free. He had one more question first. If you were already planning to end Sean's conservatorship, why arrange the deal over the summer? I hadn't fully decided to end it until I suggested it as a bribe, Eric explained. When I learned you'd actually gone on a date with someone, I thought this was a good opportunity for you to see what else you wanted in life. I was hoping Isaac would encourage you to come back to yourself in a sense. Isaac could sort of see what Eric had been trying to do. Before this summer, Sean Winters in the tabloids was like spotting Bigfoot. He'd kept to official appearances and interviews, where he always presented himself as cool and indifferent. If the indifference wasn't so much an act and more of Sean's genuine personality at the time, then of course the people who cared him about would absolutely lose their minds at Sean showing interest in anybody. And if Eric was looking for ways to pull Sean out of his shell, then pushing him towards the one thing he'd showed interest in made sense. Especially if his own relationship with his son was broken enough that spending quality time together would be viewed as suspicious and untrustworthy. It didn't absolve Eric of his choices. He should have communicated with Sean the real reason he was pushing for their relationship, or taken Sean's desires into account years ago. But, as broken as this family was, Isaac couldn't find it in him to hate Eric for this summer. In the end, he was a father worried about his son. I won't just forgive you, Sean said. You've caused way too much pain for me to forget it overnight. I understand, Eric said, and I will work hard to earn that forgiveness one day. Not just from me, Sean went on. You need to earn it from Tyler, Nick, and Luna too. I will.
Se han añadido.
Then I think we're done today. I'll let you know when to meet with the judge, Eric said. Isaac gently tugged Sean out of the room. That had been a whirlwind of a conversation, and he'd only been an outsider. He could only imagine how chaotic Sean's head must feel. Neither of them said anything until they were in the elevator. He's really going to end it, Sean said. You'll be free, Isaac grinned. I can finally stop modeling, Sean said. No more tabloids, Isaac added. And you'll be by my side? Sean asked. Isaac grinned and pushed Sean back against the wall of the elevator. You are never getting rid of me now. Sean smiled and Isaac leaned in for a victory kiss. Chapter 50, 6 months later. The bookstore had gotten balloons and flowers. Isaac hadn't stopped grinning since they finished setting up, his published book stacked on the table. It had taken a lot of convincing for Isaac to agree to use his 15 minutes of fame to publish his book. Only after Sean had read the draft and sent it to his siblings for their honest opinions could they convince Isaac that writing the coattails of Sean's name wasn't a mistake, that his book wouldn't get burned by critics. Every breakdown during the process afterwards was worth it for this moment. Sean snapped a photo of Isaac sitting at his first book signing. We're going to be so busy tonight and it's all your fault, Olivia complained. I'll buy you cookies, Isaac promised. Also, you don't usually work Tuesdays. You deliberately switched with Terrence to be here. Because I knew you'd buy me cookies, Olivia said. Oh, who's buying cookies? I want one, Luna chimed in, walking up to Isaac's table with Nick and Tyler in tow. You guys made it. Isaac beamed. Of course we made it, Nick said. Couldn't miss our future brother-in-law's first book signing. Sean made an aborted hand movement. He knew showing his siblings the ring had been a bad idea. Buying it hadn't been a much better idea. It was one of the first things he'd bought with his money once he had access to his own accounts, and he'd been carrying it around ever since. He wasn't ready to propose. Their relationship still felt too new, and he was happy with what he had. He just also knew he didn't want anyone else in his life. Isaac had confronted his father on Sean's behalf, had been completely willing to fight a man unafraid to falsify criminal charges just so that Sean could be happy. There was no way Sean was letting him go. But between getting Isaac's book published and building a house outside the city for their new animal sanctuary, a lot of Sean's time had been spent preventing meltdowns and reworking budgets. Proposing was the last thing on Sean's mind. The ring was more of a comfort to him than any actual plan. Luckily, Isaac laughed off Nick's comment. I still can't believe I'm really here. This is really my book. He held up the hardcover. You ready for your first autograph? Nick asked. He, Luna, and Tyler all had advance copies already, and all three pulled them out now. Isaac bounced in his seat and keened. Sean made sure to film him signing all three, and then he sent the video to Beck. Customers started to wander over after that, and Sean's siblings stepped to the side with him to make room. Congrats, by the way, he told Luna. She hid her face in her hands. I can't believe Dad's passing the company to me. It's not like the rest of us want it, Tyler said. You were the only option. He'd put on weight since being released from the psych hospital 5 months ago, and he looked less gaunt by the day. After being released, he'd chosen to live with Nick for a while, but he'd be moving in with Sean and Isaac once the sanctuary was ready to help them with the animals. Maybe, but he's setting time aside each week to show me the ropes, Luna said. Tyler shivered. Sounds like a nightmare. Sean had to agree. Being away from his father for 6 months was a gift all its own. Eric reached out occasionally to ask after him and invite him to lunch, but Sean had declined every invitation so far. The sheer fact he could say no without any repercussions was still novel and exciting. It's not that bad.
Luna shrugged.
It's pretty professional, honestly. He only asks about you three when we're done. I hope you tell him it's none of his business, Tyler said. Relax, I just tell him you guys are doing great. Like he actually cares. Nick rolled his eyes. Luna bit her lip. In his own way, I think he does. Maybe we could all go over for dinner one night. The 4 of them sitting down with their father for a civil meal? Sean couldn't think of anything he wanted to do less. Tyler outright laughed in her face. I don't think we're there yet, Nick replied. Eyeing Tyler, Luna sighed and nodded. Not yet. Sean doubted it would ever change, but that was okay too. He had his siblings and Isaac, Beck, and their families. He was content with them. Isaac's laughter caught his attention, and Sean turned back to him. Isaac grinned from ear to ear, happily talking about his book to every curious passerby. He only grew happier as the night went on and Beck arrived with his parents and Isaac's mom. Sean, too, felt his smile growing every minute. This was the kind of moment he wanted to hold on to forever. Surrounded by friends and family, there was no trace of the chilly loneliness he felt a year ago. Isaac's hand reached out behind his chair, just hanging loosely in the air. Grinning, Sean stepped forward and took Isaac's hand in his own, giving a gentle squeeze. Isaac beamed up at him and squeezed back. Sean held the ring box in his pocket. He'd been carrying it around for 6 months, because even though he wasn't ready to ask yet, he liked knowing that he could ask whenever he was ready. With Isaac smiling at him like that and his heart about to melt from how happy he was, Sean was beginning to think maybe he was